I'm Cynthia James, and this network is about changing lives one woman at a time.
Welcome to Women Awakening. I'm your host, Cynthia James, and it is my distinct pleasure to introduce you to fabulous women. Women who are change makers, women who have taken control of their lives, and women who are way showers. Because what they are is not exceptions. They're telling us that they're showing us possibilities to live a life that is powerful, dynamic, mighty, love filled. And so I'm grateful that I get to do this. I do this every week, and we're on all the platforms: Spotify, iHeart, iTunes, Spreaker, Amazon Video, on YouTube. And you can also go to cynthiajames.net. There's a lot of stuff there that can support you wherever you are in your life. I'm really grateful. I think this is the time for women emerging on the planet. I think our hearts, our kindness, our care, our nurturing natures are needed to bring some balance so that we leave a legacy for our children, grandchildren, and the generations that follow. So, my guest today is someone I just met. Her name is Jillian Romero Chaves, and she is the founder and CEO of Clara for Daters, and we will be talking about that. So, we're going to take a deep dive into her mission to revolutionize the modern dating culture and empower individuals to forge meaningful connections while rejecting unhealthy, what she calls situationships. Clara, welcome. I'm so glad that you're here.
Thank you. No, I'm so looking forward to having this conversation with you and getting your perspective on everything because it's super important what you're doing. And I'm just hoping that this, Clara, is also a tool for people within your own community.
Great. So, first of all, where did you come from? How did you grow up?
Where did I come from? So I grew up in the Inland Empire in Upland, and I actually lived there my whole life. I went to school on the East Coast, and then I came back and started working in the car industry. So I was an executive in the automotive space for the last 10 years of my life, and I really loved it. It was an universe that was obviously very male dominated, but it was also very powerful in that a woman who can go in there and kind of sit within what the feeling is of reviewing the data, reviewing the information, understanding the emotions of all the different cultures and people that are in the auto industry. It allows me an opportunity to kind of get curious and kind of pursue that passion on what works in the auto industry. And I came in at a point where digital was extremely new to that industry. So I was able to really be the forefront of digital operations and marketing and really being in a place of reviewing data so that when the feeling comes of like, I'm not selling any cars or there's no traffic, I'd say, okay, let's get back to the data. Let's review what we're seeing in patterns and let's get super curious. And that was where I kind of started in terms of using data as a place for me to empower myself when there's a feeling of fear and anxiety and just not knowing what to do, overwhelming. That's where data really became my friend and where I learned how to kind of lean into data as a like a friend to help me through those really high intensity periods.
Well, that's wonderful. So many women are afraid of data and digital, and, I mean, well, and that somehow you knew when you walked into that industry, even though it was male dominated, that you had a gift to offer that they did not know. So
Mhm.
even though it probably wasn't always cheery, you know, honoring you as a woman, but you were bringing something they needed, and you became a president in that industry.
I did, I was so grateful for that position. And, you know, it's intimidating being like on that board specifically for the auto center. I loved being a part of it. I got to learn so many different perspectives and really bringing a perspective of my own that was completely different than the voice around me. And I was thrilled to be part of it. It was really a great experience. And honestly, I would have continued in the auto industry had it not been for a personal circumstance that occurred that really shifted my whole life into a completely different direction. And that's kind of where I am today.
Yeah, well, I want to talk about that because you thought that your personal and professional life were balanced and in harmony and everything was flowing, and then what happened?
Yeah, so I was thriving. I was in this great role in my work. I was traveling. I was having tons of accolades and just having a lot of feelings of good self-worth. And at that time, I actually got into a relationship. Now, to go back, Cynthia, I actually didn't date a lot in high school, and I didn't date a lot in college because I was very I'm very studious. Like I was that person who always paid attention a lot to my studies, and I really didn't play around a lot with dating. So I actually really never learned how to date, right? Because in order to date, you really have to, you have, in learning how to date, you have to date. And I didn't. So I got all the way through high school and college, not really dating a lot at all. And then I got into a relationship out of college into my career where I met someone and I fell in love. And I was just completely head over heels. And honestly, living in the male dominated world in my business, it was super relief. Like it was such a relieving feeling to be able to be a feminine in a relationship, be able to
Yeah.
do the laundry, be able to do things that I didn't know that I really craved. And I loved it. I really loved being in a relationship. And I had an open heart, super vulnerable, all those pieces. Unfortunately, I was just completely traumatized when I found out that the relationship that I was going to be, this person that I was going to marry, he had ended up been cheating on me the whole time we were in the relationship. So it
Oh.
was 3 years of constant cheating, and I was devastated. I was just there are so many things like when you get cheated on, it hurts, and I know that there's so many
Mhm.
listeners out there who've experienced that because it not only hits like a piece of your ego, which the ego is one piece, but it's also your self-worth, right? Like that's
Yes,
the hard hitting
yes,
piece that you're like, how did I allow myself to get into this? And then also your own ability to choose healthy relationships. Like that's the other thing that just got hit. And I was devastated. And I remember that night I'm an educated woman. I was successful. I had all these things. I had a great community. And it took all of my power to leave that relationship that night. And so much so that I actually had to call upon my mother, put her on speaker, and say out loud what was occurring when I was finding out. And I was just traumatized because I needed that community support and that level that I could not leave alone because he was trying to convince me to stay, that he had a problem, that he wanted me to work through it. And I was like, no, I am worthy of more than this. And but I needed my
yes.
mother on the cell phone, like on speaker telling me this and reaffirming this. But yeah, it was a huge shift for me. And again, I was just terrified of one, how did I let this happen? And then two, after like all of that devastation of this relationship, I want to have kids. I want to get married. How am
Mhm.
I going to ever trust myself again to choose the right person? And that's kind of where I left myself.
Well, man, there's a whole bunch of things I want to unpack here because
Yeah.
that was well, first of all, that that you were really not a person who was in the dating world.
Mm,
So when someone walked in that felt connected
mhm.
and you could open your heart and be vulnerable with and allow your feminine energy to come in, there was an exhale because
Yeah.
you were doing a whole nother masculine role over here. But here's the thing. So I really want to honor you for picking up the phone and calling your mother. I want to say to everybody listening, community and support and your personal, um, what do you want to call it? Your club, your tribe, whatever you want to call it. You need them sometimes when you don't have the strength to take care of yourself. So I love that you did that. So now, where did Clara come from?
Yeah, so here I am. I still want to get married. I still want to have kids. And I loved being in a relationship. I absolutely loved it, right? But the other thing that occurred during this time period is modern dating, right? So internet dating started happening in 1995. Then the dating apps started occurring and the algorithm started occurring in 2000. And then you had the gamification of romance, right? With Tinder and the swiping culture, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I actually grew up and started dating in this world where that online dating and dating apps became the majority of where people met people, right?
Right.
And the other problem is, okay, first, I'm a girl who doesn't really know how to date. I wasn't dating a lot when I was younger. Now I'm actually dating again, but it's online dating, and my community doesn't know how to online date, right? The community in terms of the women that I would look to help me choose a partner, like my mother, my aunts, all of them, they're already in relationships. They've never online dated in their life.
Right.
My grandmother who's been married longer, she's been in a relationship longer than she's been single, got married at 19. She's 80 today with my grandpa. They've
Mm-hmm.
never did online dating, right? So there was no like guidebook on, okay, how do we use these tools? So here I am coming out of this relationship devastated, but also like extremely terrified of getting into that relationship again, because that's what happens, right? If you read
Mm-hmm.
any of the books and all these things, they say your attraction is to that similar kind of experience where there's excitement and there's maybe there's fire, right? They describe these things as fire and they say, oh, that's chemistry, right? But you and I both know that that is not like love. Like
That's
that is
right.
not love. That is not lasting love. That is not, I've been married for over 60 years love, right? Love is
Mm.
completely different. But we get distracted in this. And when you have so much access to all of these people who are love bombing you, right? Like showing these things in dating apps and being accessible to you, it's really hard to cut through the clutter of it all. So
Right.
anyway, I learn a lot. I'm going to therapy. I went to therapy for all these years. I started doing dating coaching. I read tons of books. How Not to Die Alone. I had read Attached, Eight Rules of Love, Jay Shetty. I read all these kind of books trying to figure out what to do, right? And then my biggest thing was, okay, it looks like what I need to do is observe, reflect, and then act, right? So
Yes.
those are the three steps. Observe what's going on in the relationship and how I'm feeling, right? Reflect on how I'm feeling and then act on it. Now, I'm like, okay, I have my mindset now. I know what I'm gonna do as I start getting back in these relationships. So I start setting up these dates. And maybe I do one on a Tuesday and one on a Friday, right? And
Mm-hmm.
I'm going on the dating apps and setting them up. So on Tuesday, I set up a date with a guy that I met on Hinge. And I'm excited to go on a date with this person. He seems nice. He's not necessarily my type, but he seems really nice. I go on the date. He's super respectful. He asked me lots of great questions about myself. I noticed that he's really polite to those around him, like all good things. But the
Mm-hmm.
problem was I really wasn't feeling like the sparks. I wasn't feeling any chemistry. So I was like, I'm not sure if I'll go on a second date with him. This was kind of lukewarm, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then on Friday, I have another date with a guy that I met on Bumble. Now,
Mm-hmm.
this Bumble guy, I could tell by his photo, he's definitely my type. And I was really excited to go out with him, especially because it's Friday. And I also like to have a margarita on Friday so I can kind of have fun. Now, he showed up a little late to the date, but I forgave him because he told me he was busy working and he completely lost track of time. And Cynthia, I love people who work and are motivated and excited about what they do. So that's okay. Like, I am attracted to that. Like, don't worry. He was a little rude to those wait staff around him. But Cynthia, you know what he told me? He told me that he skipped lunch because he had to work through it. I get that. Men get hangry. Like, let me forgive that. Like, no worries. Again, he's passionate. That's exciting. Um, and you know what? Like, the date was fun. I could see how enlivened he was about his life and everything. He didn't really ask me a lot of questions about me. But again, I think he really is like, he's one of those people you want to be around, right? When you're around it, it's like there's energy to energy, and it's okay. You can ask me a lot of questions. So needless to say, I have these two different juxtapositions on like who these people are, right? Now, before, when I was not being observing, reflecting, and acting, I would definitely go on more dates with Bumble Guy on Friday, right? Because I was
Mm-hmm.
feeling the chemistry, but then I go home and I'm anxious because he's not texting me right away. I'm anxious because he's not calling me back, right? But I still like that. I'm gonna live in that kind of feeling, right? But now I have Clara for daters because that's what I created to kind of keep me accountable when I'm observing, reflecting, and acting, all this data. So how Clara for Data works is I actually log my dates. So I go back to Clara for Daters, I log my Tuesday night date, And this app was designed with psychologists to help me create questions that'll get me thinking, right? So some of the questions that occur, I logged the guy on, I met him on Hinge. And the question is, was he respectful? Yes or no? And they're only yes or no. You can never say maybe.
Great.
Yes. Yes. Was he polite and kind to those around him? Yes or no? Yes. Was it obvious that he was into you? Yes. He asked me for a second date, like right when we were leaving. So I actually go through all these 10 set of questions.
Mm-hmm.
He's a 10. Literally, I do thing, and there's a 10 there. And I'm like, well, wait a minute. I wasn't even going to go on a second date with this guy. Like, what am I thinking, Jillian? So then I go and I log the Friday night guy. And obviously the same questions come up. Was he respectful to those around you? Well, there wasn't an option to be like, see, he was hangry. Like, it's yes or no, right? There's no see hangry. So I put, no, he wasn't. Was it obvious that he was into me? He still hasn't even texted me back. It's like Sunday, right?
Mm-hmm.
So then I go through the questions and he scores a 3. So I'm sitting there looking at these two guys and I'm like, what the heck, Jillian? Like, what relationships am I pursuing? Which one is the healthy social connection, right? Which one? It's the first one. Even if it's not going to lead anywhere, this is the opportunity for me to observe, reflect, and act. And I need to act on the person who's making me feel like that experience was a 10, right?
Yes.
If 3, we gotta reflect on that and act on that as well, right? Maybe we go on more dates, but at the end of the day, I need to keep being honest with myself on the situation and the relationship that I'm choosing. And if I continue to go on dates with number 3 and he keeps coming back with maybe a 2 or a 5 or 7, at least that data is there. And eventually it's up to me as a person to observe that data, reflect, and then act on it. Either way. But Clara is never going to tell you, Jillian, stop dating the 3, like go for the 10. That's for you to make that choice. I just want Clara to help present the information in a way that you can feel empowered to make your own decisions in which relationships you're choosing.
Well, what's incredible about this app is it's asking you to become conscious in the people that you are connecting with and the people that you are dating, but it's also asking you to look at your patterns, because sometimes those places where we have chemistry, are not the healthy, supportive, loving, caring people. They're connected to some old belief system or limiting belief that's happening. So what I love is that you go yes to no. So whether you get involved and get deep with, Tuesday date or not, one of the things that I've been with my husband now for 28 years. And one of the things that I tell people is the way relationships start is how they proceed.
Yeah.
And so your app says, how's this starting?
And that's, and that's something that I had to really reflect on too, is like, I started choosing people to go on second dates with where it wasn't obvious that they were into me, right? Why am I choosing someone who doesn't like me back? Like, is that a relationship that I want to be in? Does that feel good? Why do I like someone who doesn't choose me back, right? When I actually go on a second date with the Hinge guy, with the guy from Tuesday, he so likes me. He's seeing things that he really likes about me. He's communicating that he likes these things that he likes about me. And this is a true story. Like, this is someone that actually dated in February, and I was able to kind of reflect, and I ended up going on with like 10 dates with him. He ended up moving, so it didn't work out. But I kept going on dates and experiencing a social connection that I wasn't even open to prior to reviewing and observing and honoring this information. Because that's the other hard piece of this, is we can talk in this world that I'm in, women talk about red flags all day long.
Yeah.
We're so used to calling each other out on these red flags. Oh, your best friend's going to call it a red flag, right? But the reality is, it's really hard for us to act on a red flag personally.
Right.
And I don't know if you've had this experience, Cynthia, with some of your listeners or some of the people within your community. But for me personally, when I like someone, it's really hard for me to be honest about some of the negative things that I'm seeing early on to my best friend or my sister, right? And my mother, like all 3 of them, because they're going to call me out. They're going to call it out. And I'm trying to like see if it's a person I really like like. I want to ignore it, right? And that's another reason why I created Clara, is because I can really call out those red flags in a personal space and observe it. So someone's not telling me don't date that jerk, right?
Mhm,
The
mhm.
information is like, are you okay with choosing to date a jerk? Right. And it's
Right.
different. It's empowering because you're choosing that relationship versus your community is telling you that relationship's not good for you.
Well, yeah, and I mean, I think, a lot of times too, people in our lives that love us, if they see us really embroiled in something, they may hold back their own thoughts anyhow. But I think you're getting clear about your worth
Yes.
and 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 how you want to be treated and valued in relationship, because a lot of times these good-looking hunky guys, you know what I'm saying? I mean, they're just playing. They're not wanting to be. One of the things I loved about the Hinge guy is that he's asking questions.
Yeah.
He wants to know about you as opposed to spending the whole time talking about himself and showing up in a way that um that doesn't say, you know, you're sitting across from me and I like this sparkle. I like this feeling,
Hmm.
and I also think that, that sometimes, um, I mean, have you noticed that sometimes the three people have a resemblance to the fiance?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And that's so I don't remember which book I read, but right after my relationship ended, I saw that women who get in relationships with narcissists or women who are used to that type of person, they tend to continue on in those relationships. And that's another reason why I was just terrified that that was going to happen again. But that's another reason why Clara became so important for me to create, is because I was actually extremely ashamed when it first happened. I didn't tell anyone. I was so ashamed that me, an educated, successful woman, allowed myself to spend so much time giving of myself to someone who was not deserving, right? I was just, and that I didn't recognize that he was, right? Because there were definitely other things that should have been enough for me to leave the relationship. It wasn't
Mm,
cheating, but there was things about him, like him coming home at night. I always remember being excited to fix whatever problem he had. Like if he had a bad day, I was so excited to be the soothingness to his bad day, right? And that was something that's a pattern going back into like how I'm the oldest child, I'm the oldest cousin, I am the overachiever, right? Looking at patterns, it's
mhm.
very obvious why I needed that kind of relationship and what it filled me in. But honestly, it's never going to fill me in a way that is healthy to be filled. And I want to break this pattern so that I don't continue to do this, right? I need to be in a relationship that really serves me, that fills my cup instead of me filling other people's cup. And that's where Clara is helping me learn, like, hey, when this feels like a 10, that means your cup was filled in this date. And I'm not saying the 10 is going to always be a 10. That's why you never know a person, right? It takes a long time to get to know a person, and it
Right,
has to be over many seasons under different circumstances, different environments, and seeing them, right? So the questions actually get more advanced as you progress on in the relationship. So date 10 questions are going to be completely different than date 1 questions, right? But you
right.
have to constantly observe and reflect. You can't just stop, because those first like 6 dates are going to be on interview mode. He's going to be on his
Mhm,
best behavior. Now the
mhm,
problem is I wasn't even choosing, I was choosing these guys who were 3, even on their best behavior, and wasting
mhm.
my time there. So now at least I'm cutting it off a little sooner. So I'm a
Right.
being a bit more efficient in that. So that was what's helpful.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, it's like I think, ladies, it's really important to understand that you're a prize. You're a treasure. You
Mhm.
should never have to work to get someone to see you or love you or honor you. And one of the things I loved about your dating the 10 for more than a few dates, even though it doesn't feel like the spark is there, is
Yeah.
that you're getting to experience what it feels like to be honored,
Mhm.
what it feels like to be seen, what it feels like to have someone desire to be in your presence.
Yeah. And I can tell you, Cynthia, I mean, he became very attractive when all of those things started occurring, right? I'm like,
Right.
wow, this does feel really good. Like I could, that attraction, he's had a nice smile, his eyes started getting bigger, and I got excited going to see him, right? Because
Hmm.
I'm excited because I know he's going to make me feel good. I know that not
Yes.
make me feel good, but make not me feel bad, right?
Hmm.
Just it's going to be an experience that I'm looking forward to instead of dreading, right? There's no work in this in going to go see him on this date, right? There was no work that occurred. It's almost like that release and just being present and in my energy. And honestly, I've always struggled with feminine energy and like dealing with that. Obviously, I lean into data. I lean
Hmm.
into all these different things that are kind of more associated with like the masculine side of a
Hmm.
person. But I'm my goal is to kind of trick my brain so that with this information, I can keep reflecting and jump myself in. So similar to like
Yes.
meditation, when your mind wanders, right?
Yes.
You want to
Right.
catch it and put it back in. That's
Yes.
what data does for me, right?
Right.
Go back when I'm like,
Right.
okay, I went on 5 dates and I didn't log any of them, and I'm already feeling anxious, right? I'm in an
Mm.
anxious spot. I go back, I put in the information, and I still start feeling calm again, right?
Right.
It logs me back in. I'm like, oh yeah, I'm feeling good. This is good.
Well, this is so incredible. Okay, how do people find you? How do they find the app? Because I just think this is spectacular what you created.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm really hoping to get it into hands as many people as possible. It's completely free. This is a tool to help you choose connections that feel good, right? And I want it to be free
Okay.
in this element. So it's in the App Store. You can download it. It's called Clara for Daters. So you're free to download, sign up, and use it. Start using it. It's not a dating app, ladies. It is not a dating app. You're never going to meet someone on my app. There's enough dating apps out there. I don't need to add to it, right? And I don't even want to say that I can make a better algorithm than what's out there. This is for you to really learn how to use dating apps, use all these different like funnels in terms of where these leads are coming from, and getting good at qualifying what feels good for you. But Clara for Daters is in the App Store. You can follow me on Instagram, TikTok, and Clara for Daters on Instagram and TikTok. It's at Clara for Daters, and for me, it's at Jillian Romero Chaves.
Well, I'm so honored to know you, and I just think this is so smart because really nobody's teaching us how to date. We
Mm-mm.
just sort of fall in and
Yeah.
hope it works out okay.
Yeah,
Right.
and honestly, no one can be a teacher because dating apps just happened 10 years ago. Like
Right.
2012 was Tinder. This is very recent. So it's
Uh,
we got to figure out it for ourselves, This is
Yes,
new.
100%. Well, I ask the same last question of every guest.
Okay.
I'm so grateful that you've been here because I can see the women out there going, whoa, and going to the app store. Okay, so the last question is, this show is called Women Awakening. What do you think is the most important thing about women awakening on the planet at this time?
I am in such awe of my female community in general. I've been blessed that I have a wonderful family community, wonderful network business community. And I've seen the awakening occur in the last, 5, maybe 7 years in the different generations. So an awakened 25-year-old versus an awakened 30-year-old versus 40, 50, and so on, all the way up to my grandmother, right? Who's in her
Right.
80s. And I can tell you that it's the most powerful time for us as I've ever seen. But I also want to be cognizant and aware that it's also extremely overwhelming, right? Because what happens when you get lots of information and are awakened to new things, it's overwhelming. And sometimes there's people who can live with all this new awakening and really act on it and be excited about it. But sometimes it's too overwhelming and we want to go back and we want to be back into sleep mode because it's easier, it's a bit more comfortable, right? And I
Yes.
would just encourage every woman who has been awakened in these last 7 years to try to lean in and then find tools and community that help you kind of pull in the information that you're awakening to and learn how to act on it. Because I do see a lot of women who are awakened, They're observing, they're reflecting, but they can't go any further. They're stuck here and they're not able to act. And that's what's creating this anxiety amongst all of the women that I've seen, right? If I'm talking to Awakened Woman, that anxiety is something that just it kills. And I've definitely slipped into it over and over again at different times. But all I can say is for me, my experience has been if I lean into the data and kind of follow the steps, I will be able to remove the anxiety, and that awakeness becomes powerful and actually I guess a fluid to like make me move forward and make bigger changes in my own life personally and in the community of my others.
Well, that was beautiful, Jillian, and thank you I'm so grateful you were here. I'm so grateful that you're doing what you're doing. It's an honor to know you.
Thank you so much. I love talking to you. And I
Mm,
mean, I love that you're so passionate about what you do because I'm very passionate about what I do. And that's why this conversation was so fun to have.
Awesome. Okay, ladies, I say the same thing to you every show at the end, different words, but the same meaning. You first. Choose you, honor you, love you, lift you, and dare to demand that other people treat you with in the ways you deserve. You're powerful, you're mighty, you're here for a reason. I'm so grateful that we get to walk this path together, and I'm grateful that I get to share fabulous women. I'll see you next time. Much love.